Okay, so I'm going to do a little video about how to string a squash racket. There's plenty of videos out there about tennis rackets, loads about badminton actually as well, but not very much about squash. Now, there isn't a heck of a lot of difference between doing a squash racket and a tennis racket. The string's obviously a little thinner, tensions are a lot lower, and the main problem is this part here, because a lot of these will be very different. The design varies big time in squash rackets, whereas in tennis rackets it's more or less the same, so it's fairly straightforward. Whereas in squash rackets this can be can vary a lot, but this is a fairly straightforward one anyway. It's very similar to tennis racket, as you can see. But the only thing is now all these strings, all the mains come together in the bottom here in the throat, and they get actually very close together. In fact, so close together that I might have a bit of a problem putting this into the machine, because these two grommets are so close together that my thing here might not fit in between them. But then I use a little spacer to kind of stick in here first, and then then I'm fine. Then I can put the racket into the machine. So what do you have to do before you start? What I do is get a little Sharpie like this, and I mark off the mains and the crosses where they cross over. So there's no crossover here. Essentially there's no skips, so the mains don't skip any of the cross holes. Not in the throat, so that's fine. That's my last cross. So I'm just going to do a little X here, and I'm going to do a little X here. So there are my last crosses, and then, sorry, my last mains. I should do a little line. That's a line. Oh, damn it. But anyway, that's a line. I'm going to clean that off obviously later. And this is going to be my first cross here. And it's just going to be crosses all the way. But then things get interesting up here. So this is my main. Okay, so this is going to be a main. So do line. And this one's going to be a cross. And this one's going to be a cross. And this one's going to be a main. And this one's going to be a cross. And this one's going to be a main. Okay, and then there's just mains, mains, mains. So that's the last main. That's my first cross. That's a main. That's a cross. That's a cross. That's a main. And then that's a cross. And then the crosses all the way down to here. So this way I know which holes I need to skip. That's very important. The next thing you want to do is figure out how you're going to start. So where are you going to put the starting loop? It's easy to demonstrate on tennis rackets. So depends on essentially how many mains you've got. Now in a squash racket, I think pretty much, unless it's this design where it has a hole in the throat, you're always going to have your main loop at the top. So which means the string is going to go, this is the middle here. So the string is going to go up, over, and then back down. So these are your two main strings, and you know the first loop is going to be here instead of here. Whereas with tennis rackets, that can vary depending on how many mains you've got in the throat. So in this case in the throat we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mains, which means essentially we have 3 pairs of mains. Because there's 3 pairs of mains, I'm going to take the center pair, and that's going to be my first loop. So the first loop is going to go down and around here and then up, you know, and it's going to come up and then it's going to go around, and you know it's going to spread out that way. So my first loop is going to be in the bottom, whereas with this racket my first loop is going to be here at the top. And if I turn it over, you can see that's the first loop there. Whereas in the case of this racket, if I go up the middle and I look at the middle, you can see there's no loop here. The loops are here, and my actual loop is down here at the bottom, my first loop. Now if you can see that, just right there over. This is the first loop is down here at the bottom. You see? Because there's 3 pairs. If I were, this because it's an even number. If it was an odd number, then the main loop would start up there at the top. So that's what you want to figure out. It's very important to mark your center off the racket as well, because when you put it into the machine you can easily get off center, and you can mount it here or here, and then everything goes completely wrong if you're not careful, obviously. Okay, so I'm going to put this thing into the machine. When you're mounting it onto the machine, the main thing you want to do is make sure it is in there tight, so it's not moving in any direction, because if it's moving, once you start stringing, things start moving around, tension goes all over the place. It's not a good thing. Okay, just want to give you a quick close-up of how I've marked the holes. So you see an X is a cross, a line is a main, an X is a cross, and then the line is a main. You can't see it because it's all dark here. And then again, cross and a main, because they're obviously all mixed together. And once I take the string out, you'll be surprised. It's actually hard, not that easy to tell which ones go across and which ones go down. Because these are very close together. You could easily just, put the cross into this one and put the main into this one, and it's all going to be wrong. That's one thing. The other thing, maybe I wasn't clear enough about, the center loop. So essentially, even, odd, and odd, even, like that can be confusing. So it's an even number of strings, but it's an odd number of pairs, obviously. So 6 strings, 3 pairs. So I can cut that in the middle. So then I have my middle loop here. Whereas, let's say I had 2 more mains, and I had 4 pairs in the bottom. 4 pairs, you can't really have a middle loop then, because this middle, you can see this loop is straight in the middle here, whereas if I had another loop here, I'd had 4 of them, and if I split that in the middle, it would be in between the loops, the middle of that would be in between the second and the third loop. So that middle then obviously means the middle loop has to be then at the top. That's very important when you're starting out stringing, because this is how you then start putting in the string. Well, I'll show you that again once I have the racket mounted in the machine. So that's our next step. We're going to get going on that now. Actually, the next thing is going to be, we're going to take out the string, obviously. So this one's already broken, which you weren't really, well, generally when the string goes, you want to just cut everything out, because otherwise this racket is under uneven tension and it can warp the racket. But nobody really does it, and I don't think it really is that much of an issue. But if you're watching the video, probably you want to cut out the string as soon as the string goes. And the way you want to do it is you want to cut pairs of strings. Now, I really haven't got a middle here, so I'm going to start here. You see the way you just do 2 at a time like this, and go up and go down. 1 up, 1 down, just where the strings, the mains, and then the crosses cross over each other. That's where you do it. And you kind of want to do them fairly quickly, so you minimize the time the racket is under uneven tension. And then, you're going to have a few left, so you're just going to cut those then through in the middle here. But don't forget to mark off your holes, your grommets first, because otherwise once you do this, things start to become much less clear. And then, you want to kind of see if there's any sort of weird patterns as well, if you get any sort of block holes, because you're gonna, oh yeah, Jesus, I nearly forgot. One thing more you wanna mark off, that's your tie-offs. So this is my tie-off here, I do a little circle, and then my tie-off here, and a little circle. And as you can see, I've only 2 knots, just one here and one here, which means this is going to be a 1-piece job. If you see 4 knots, it's a 2-piece job. Some rackets can do both. Some can't, because they don't have the right, they don't have the bigger grommets that are required to put 2 strings through. This one is probably fine. That's big enough, and that's big enough, so I could do a 2-piece here. But it depends on whether you want to do a 1-piece or a 2-piece. Really depends on where your mains end. Do they end at the top or do they end at the bottom? If they end at the bottom, you want to tie them off and start stringing from top down. If they end at the top, you can just keep going then. Obviously 1-piece is easier than 2-piece. It's only 2 knots then. And I think whenever you do a knot, you're going to lose some tension. So just doing 2 knots is better than doing 4 knots. Even though if you do a good job, it's still just fine. But with the rackets, some of these rackets obviously depends on the number of mains, and that'll then determine where your main loop is going to be. So if your main loop is at the top, you're doing fine. If your main loop is at the bottom, then you're going to end up with your mains finishing at the bottom as well, because they go in pairs. So you're going to start your first loop down here, you're going to go up, and you're going to come down, and then you're usually going to end up at the bottom. Although, don't quote me on that. I'm not 100% sure about that right now. So just start pulling out the string. Don't worry too much about it, but you do want to kind of have a look around and see, if any blocked holes and that sort of thing. But you're kind of going to come across that when you string anyway. Sometimes, you know, people do around the world pattern as well. So you avoid a 2-piece job, you still can get away with just doing 2 knots, but that's more advanced. We're not going to get into that now. You can look that up online in other videos. We're just going to go with a simple 1-piece string job because this is just for beginners, and we're not going to get too technical or too complicated with things. There we go, we got our racket free from string. Time to mount it now. Okay, now as far as string goes, I'm going with the Ashaway Super Nick XL Titanium. Ashaway, they're really good for squash. Don't want to get into too much detail right now, but it's 17 gauge, 1.25 millimeters. It's a multi-filament with a braided jacket, and it is just nylon essentially. So it's recommended for players wanting to match a titanium string to their squash rackets for optimal performance and appearance. Recommended string tension up to 42 pounds. So we're not going nearly that high. We're going to go with, you know, this racket is the Wilson 145, K145. So squash rackets are notorious for not having any specs on them. So when you go online, the spec I found was between 22 and 28 pounds. So I'm going to go something in between. I'm probably going to go something on the lower side anyway. I'm going to go with 24. 24, 25 is safe for squash rackets if you can't find the spec for them. Right now I'm going to mount this thing here. So see, that's the middle here, and top, and the middle and the bottom. So I have to unscrew this knot down here. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. So there we go. So as you can, well, you can't see that because I'd have to zoom in, but there is a problem. I cannot mount this racket as it is because, let me show you. Let's get this off the thing. I have a problem right there. Two grommets here are too close together, and this is too thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little washer. Sorry, not a washer, a nut. And I'm going to put that in there as some kind of a spacer, and then that's going to help me mount that there. So let's see how that's going to go. I'm not going to bore you with that. I'm going to just turn off and I'm going to check back with you when it's mounted. But you see it's got 6 points, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you got to manipulate this a little bit to get it in there. But you got to make sure that it's in there nice and tight. So, and you want to tighten, you know, so for both sides, you know, at the same time. So you have even tension on all sides and even pressure on all sides. But it's pretty kind of self-explanatory, really. Okay, so the whole mounting of the racket has proven to be a little bit more challenging than I would have liked, especially, well, particularly, well, exclusively because of the problem down here. So what I'm using is one of these Allen keys, and I wedged it in between here to kind of work as a spacer, and it seems to be the right size, but these come in all sorts of different sizes, so you definitely find the right size for you. And I wrapped around a little bit of sellotape to prevent it from causing any damage to the racket itself. It's just that, you know, these two grommets are so freaking close together that even with that, it's still pushing out one of the grommets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the string through now before I tighten it all the way, because otherwise it's just not going to happen. So like I said, my first loop is going to be the top, so I'm going to start here at the top, and I'm going to put in, I do short sides that way and then long side this way. You may want to do the other way around, but I'm going to show you how I do it. It's easy to modify if needs be. So I'm just going to start off here on this side, and because it's so darn awkward, I'm just going to pull this out, make enough space for the string to go through. I actually have to go through it this way, so around the pole here and then out that way. But then once I'm done, I'm just going to switch it over like this. So what you have to do first is measure your short side. Short side measuring is actually very simple. If you have a reel, then first what you're going to have to do is going to have to cut off the main amount of string, but I have the actual, just a set there, so that's already measured for me. If you need to measure off a set, it's just the length of the racket. I don't know if these are 27 inch, the same as tennis, or are they shorter? Yeah, they're roughly the same. So essentially, for one racket, you're going to need 18 lengths of these. So just take off a reel and just measure out 18 lengths, and that's going to be this. And then we're going to measure out the short side. Just be careful, these can be very easily tangled up, so just going to unwind it now. I'm just going to walk around the room, unwinding it, making sure it doesn't get tangled up. Okay, so now to measure the short side, very easy. Right, what you do is you put the string through, and then you run it into your machine, and you pull in as much as you need to in order to, oh Jesus Christ, in order to be able to pull tension on it, right? So I have to wrap it around twice around the tensioning mechanism, tensioning head here. So that's it. So that's my first one, and that's as much as I need to actually be able to pull tension on it, right? So now what I have to do is I have to know the number of my mains. The number of my mains is, now you have to be 100% about this, I counted them and I looked them up online. My mains, I got 12 mains, right? So I need, this is my, so 6 this way and 6 this way. So I got my first one in, so I need another 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab it at the very top there, and I'm going to pull it through. So that's 1. That's 2, that's 3, that's 4, that's 5, that's 6. So that's it, that's my short side measure. Everything else is going through the other hole, the other grommet. So I'm just going to run everything through this other hole here. Run it through this one here in the bottom throat. There we go. Okay, so we're through, and I'm just going to pull the whole string through. This is going to be the long side. That's the side that's going to do half of the mains and all of the crosses. Oops, be very careful. Once I actually left it like this, and I put the mains in and only then realized what I had done. Or was it the whole racket I did? I don't know, but I lost a lot of time. So be careful. Now, there we go. So that's all my first 2 mains are in. That's my first loop there on top. And now what I have to do is I have to start stringing. Put tension on these things. But of course, before I go ahead, I gotta tighten this down properly. So the strings are in. And where is my Allen key? There, just gonna stick that in there in between the 2 bottom grommets. There we go. And then I'm gonna tighten up that knot here. And then it's gonna keep it nice and secure for me. There we go. I'm gonna tighten that even further once I've pulled on the tension of these first 2. So I'm gonna start off with the short side, and for that to do, I need to first clamp the string here, because I'm going to be pulling it through here. And in order to make sure that the string doesn't slip, I'm just going to, gonna need to adjust that a little bit. You kind of, with time you get a feel for, that feels good, that'll probably hold it. Like, squash isn't massive tension, so you don't need to worry about slippage all that much. Let's try this one. It needs to be tightened a little bit. Yeah, that's good. And then in order to be extra safe, you use your clamp, starting clamp there as well. And that's going to be your extra insurance that the string isn't going to slip. Because if it slips, it'll get damaged and it'll pretty much be useless. Whoa. Okay, there we go. We're tying to pull some tension. So I'm putting in 24 kilograms. There we go. It's all good, safe and secure. Yeah, okay. So we clamp our first main. There we go. So this constant pull machine, you see adjusted there a little bit. So that's fine, because sometimes a bit of things loosen up a little bit, and so it kind of pulls tension again. So that's good. And you have to make sure you've got it tied on really well, because if you don't, it'll start pulling it in and you start losing tension and all that sort of stuff. So make sure you've tightened everything really well. So there we go, we've got tension here now, so I can let go from this side. And then what I'm going to do is immediately, now I could go up that way, or I could pull this one. Yeah, let's do one more on the short side. So this is very simple now, we just go through the next grommet, up through the next one here, and pull it through. This is just like any other racket, tennis racket, so on and so forth. But I'll show you a couple of first mains, and then I'm gonna just keep going on my own, and I'm gonna check back in later on. So now I'm pulling this way. I have to make sure I've tightened this really well, because otherwise it'll pull it up. But it doesn't seem to be moving. And like I said, squash, like the tensions aren't that high, but tennis rackets, you can't get away with anything, because the tensions are so high, they will actually move stuff very easily. Okay, that looks good. Nothing's moving, nothing's changing. Let go. Got my first two mains on the short side tension. Now we're going to go with the first one on the long side. You kind of want to do 2 and 2, 3 and 3, something like that. Keep it equal. I'm going to get this one off. And get this one off, just to make sure. This is where I'm going to put a little bit extra tension on. It's a constant pull machine, so that's good. Going to adjust for any loss there. And then we just clamp it. I like to pull it a little bit myself as well from this side, just to make sure the first two mains are really good, really well pulled. There we go, even though I might introduce a little bit more tension than there would be, but we're talking very little. And then, next one. And the mains are very simple. The only thing is make sure you've marked your holes well, so you're skipping the right holes and you're running the string through all the right holes. Other than that, mains are very easy and very simple. So now you just keep going. This one is very textured, the surface. So once you start doing crosses with this particular string, things get there's a lot of friction, so it's not as easy as normal poly strings. Not poly, sorry, normal multi-filament strings are usually nice and soft and easy to string, whereas this one isn't quite as user-friendly. Okay, so there we go. We've got our first 4 in, only got a few more to go, but I'm going to stop the recording here and I'll check back once I have all the mains done, and we're going to start the crosses. But this is great, we're doing really well now. Ring. Okay, so now you will see the value of marking your grommets, because this next hole here is a cross, and this next one is a main. But if I didn't have this, I would have to figure out, okay, so what's my next? Where am I going next? Even though you can sort of figure it out because it's been strung before, it's much easier if you've marked them. So that's a cross, I'm going to skip that one, and I'm going to go straight into the next one. That's going to be my next main. So that's where I'm going, through this one here. And down here at the bottom, it's easy enough because you just keep going. There's no skips in the bottom. So that's the reason why you want to have them marked. Now, as you can see down here, it's very easy. There's no skipping, and that's going to be the last one. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's the 6th one. That's the first cross then, here. Okay, so that's the end of the mains. As you can see, we've done pretty well. We haven't got a lot of wastage. This is how much I need to put it into the tensioning head. So that's all the wastage there is. So it's pretty good. And now it's time to tie off the knots. Now that's why you also have to mark off where you tie off the knots. In this case, I can see that this grommet here is much bigger than the rest of them. So this is where I'm going to be tying it off. So let's go around through here. And this string is particularly awkward because it's so heavily textured. But now tying off the knots, maybe not the purpose of this video because it's I'd have to really zoom in. But there's a lot of great videos out there. I'll put a link somewhere in this video to the. I'm going to do a Purnell knot. So the easiest was double half hitch. It's just over, under, through, tuck, tension, over, under, through, and that's it. You're all done. We're going to do a Purnell knot. So we're going over, under, and through, and then we're going to go over, under, and through this hole we've created, and then back up. So this gives us this part, this first loop that we've done, and we can tension that, and then we just, to secure the knot, we just pull this through. So I just like to use a starting clamp so I can provide enough grip and I can pull it nice and tight. There we go, so it's gone really nice, tight. And then just pull the other knot to secure it. Just give it a little bit of force, and that's it. We've got our main secured. What you want to do is kind of, while you're holding it back here, you may want to let go there. So if there's any extra looseness, you can kind of pull it up. And then we just cut it out. Just leave a little bit of a tail so it doesn't get pulled in. And that's it. That's kind of what we've wasted on this side. But you can't really do much better than that. And now we just start our crosses on this side here. So we're going to start top to bottom, which is brilliant, which is where we want to go. So I think, yeah, so whenever the loop starts at the top, you're always going to end up at the top with your mains, and you're going to be going top to bottom. If you have your main loop at the bottom, actually your center loop at the bottom, then you're going to end up at the bottom. So you may want to do a two-piece, or you may want to do the around the world pattern. Let me just zoom out a little bit here so you can see better. Okay, so our first cross is up there, so that's where we're going. Now the crosses are going to be a little bit trickier, especially if they're going to be blocked holes, as this first one is. But it's gone through very nicely. So whether or not you want to go first under or over the first string depends on what's your preference. I like to go under and then over. It's just good to have a habit. So we have a lot of skips here. So it's kind of hard to figure out. This is the majority of our crosses here. That's what I want to do for the majority of my crosses. So go under, I'm going to end up here. Over, so then I'm going to have to do over, so I'm going to go under, so over. So I'm going to end up under, and then I'm going to have to go over. See where it gets complicated? Sure, I'm too lazy to figure this out. I'm just going to pull it through and we're going to see how we end up. If I have to go up and down first, then so be it. You can hear that noise that it's making. That's all it's so heavily textured, it's like a rope, this particular string. And that's why the crosses with this one are a pain in the ass. Oh, and these holes are so blocked. Okay, gonna try and cut it at an angle, create a sharp angle, and see if we can kind of force our way through that way. And it's a soft enough string as well, so it's not like a poly, which you can usually pretty easily push through. This one will bend and all that sort of stuff, but I can see it is coming through, so I see the tip of it on the other side, which is brilliant. But I do need a little bit more than that to kind of grab onto it. So I'm just going to use these pliers to push it through very little bit at a time. But that's the problem when you have a lot of skips. You can have a lot of blocked holes, and it's just part of the territory, I suppose. No need to panic. Just keep going at it. And if all else fails, get a little bit of Vaseline, rub it on the tip. It'll slide through much more easily then. Especially when you have a string like this, which is so heavily textured. And it's soft, so you can't really apply a whole lot of force. Now, if it's soft, what you do is you can twist it, and if you twist it, it becomes harder and easier to push through. So that's kind of how I've done a few of these. But this one is going to be a challenge, but just don't panic, keep going. Keep twisting it, keep pushing it through. And it is coming through slowly but surely. But it's just so heavily textured. Oh, such a pain, this one. But it's great string, so it's worth it. Be careful not to damage the string, obviously, on the other side. There we go, it is moving, but slowly but surely. Okay, might have enough to grab onto now for this side. There we go. Got through. Now, hopefully I didn't misweave. I didn't even check. So under, over, 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 over. So we start first on under, we're gonna end on an over. If you don't end on an over and you started under, or if you start over and don't end on an under, you may want to check your weaving. If you get the weaving wrong, well, you know, you're gonna have to do the whole thing again. So be careful. It's better to go more slowly and not misweave than to misweave and just have to do the whole thing again. With time you will get better at this and you will get quicker at this, but when you first start off, take your time. Do not rush this part. It's not worth it. You will screw everything up if you get it wrong. Yikes. I just have to be careful here, just do it very slowly. Otherwise I can damage the string. And this is just the way this string is, you just have to take it slow. Yikes, like sandpaper. Now, there we go, we got through. So then what you want to do is you don't want to pull tension just yet. Because what this string is doing for you, it's kind of providing an easy way for you for your next string, because it's pushing one down, one up, one down, one up. So it's kind of providing space for you to go through. So what you want to do is you want to string one ahead. This is my next cross here. Can you see it? Sort of, yeah. So I'm going to go in. And now I just have to be careful. So because I've skipped one, because I started under, but now I'm going to have to start over because I've skipped. I skipped over one of the mains. So I'm going to start the other way, so the opposite that I did before. So then that you have opposite tension. So one is pulling it down, the other one is pushing it up, and then the next one's pulling it down. So then you get this nice weave and you get good tension. That's the only way really it'll work. So you've got to be very mindful up here at the top or at the bottom where you're skipping strings, so you don't start the same way. And obviously then there'll be no tension between the strings. You know, they'll both be pushing it up or both be pushing it down. And that's obviously not going to work. So I started over and I went under and then over, 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 and I finished under, so that's good. Started over, finished under, I'm good. I can now go through the next grommet. There we go. So that's easy now. That wasn't blocked. See how much thicker that was? Now I'm going to pull most of it through. I'm not going to pull everything through because obviously it's going to be easier with less tension because this is helping me. Once I tension this is going to get tighter and it's going to get harder to pull through. So it's called stringing one ahead. So now I have a little bit left on this side and it's time to pull tension on the first cross. Some people pull extra tension on the first cross and on the last mains. Not sure if that's really necessary. What you may want to do is, this is sort of a hard weave because it's so close. I don't know exactly why, but it's a hard weave anyway. So you may want to pull it twice. So the first time you kind of realigning things, you know, and then the second time you are actually pulling attention, and you have the tension in the string. So time to clamp it. There we go. And that's it. Now you may want to let go of this one before you pull this one. So you can pull this a little bit as well, but that's not that important. It won't make that much of a difference. Okay, so that's locked in there, good and well. Now I can let go here, and then I can continue to pull and pull the rest through. This is the long side, obviously. There we go. And before I tension that, I'm going to weave the next one. So I'm not skipping here, so I'm going to be starting the same way. So I'm going to be starting over. So it has to be opposite. So if we look at this main string here, the first cross is going under it, the second cross is coming over it, and the third cross has to be coming under it. So just look at the first string that you go through. So when I came through this way, I went under it. So now when I'm starting from this side, I'm going to go over it. And then just run it through. There we go. And before you go through the grommet, just double check everything. So over, 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 over. Perfect. And through the grommet on the other side. And pull. Get most of it through. It's getting easier now. And the middle ones are very easy, and then it gets a little bit tighter again towards the bottom. And again, leave a little bit off so you can pull tension. Don't pull everything through. There we go, that's about enough time to pull tension. There we go. You may consider this hard weave as well, so you may want to pull that twice. It's so tight here. And then we clamp it. Let go and pull it through. There we go. And then you just keep going, and then I'll check in again once we get to the bottom. Okay, so now that we have successfully navigated the maze here that is the top of the racket, now things get really easy. These are the middle crosses. So I think there was 2 skips, so I started under and I ended up with my main after the last skip. So the majority of my crosses now are starting under, which is what I wanted. So I think if it's a 1 skip, you start the opposite way of what you want. If it's 2 skips, then you start the same way that you want, and you will end up in doing the same starts then with the crosses. I don't know whether that's important to anybody else or not, but I like that myself. I like to start under. So this is all in there, all the top crosses are in there, so it's nice. This is where you can kind of screw things up. Now you pretty much autopilot down to the bottom. There's no more skips, so you don't even have to worry about the bottom anymore. So there we go. Let's do a couple here, see just how easy it is. See how easy I'm pulling them here compared to the way it was at the top of the racket. So now just pull tension here. Pull it in. Now, there we go. Clamp it. I like to straighten it as I go along, because otherwise then it can be all weird. And pull the rest of it through. Be careful not to kink it, you can still screw things up. There we go. And now before I tension it, I'll pre-weave the next one. So we're going in, starting under, and then we're just going to push the string through now at this stage. And this is the fun, easy part when you can really fly through these middle crosses. But the thing is, with this one, it's got these kind of open holes, so it allows the string to vibrate a bit more. Kind of essentially just makes the head size a little bit bigger by the width of these beams. You know, it's kind of a bit of a marketing ploy. But within a technically smaller head size, you get a bigger sweet spot. I don't know. I guess there is a bit of an improvement here. It allows a bit more movement and vibration of this middle crosses. But it just means it's a little bit harder to stick the string through. Let's just see how easy that pulls through. Time to tension. Then, you know, straighten, clamp. And get that one through. We can pull the rest through. Straighten that out as much as possible. And then go for the next cross. Okay, so we're now down here at the bottom at the very last cross. And things are getting a little bit more tricky to kind of pull through and to weave down here, because things are getting closer, things are getting tighter, because all these crosses have been put in, so that has tightened the domains as well. So here we go, going with our last cross, no blocked holes, wonderful. So I'm going under. I had no skips, so I'm still doing the same, but just want to be extra careful now here. You don't want to fall at the last hurdle. Just take your time, because these are will get trickier. There we go. So just double check, so under, over, and over. Put it through, and pull as much through as we can. This is getting very tight, so this is what I would probably class a hard weave, because it's very tight around here. So I may want to pull both of these twice. There we go, so one pull and then another pull. There we go. Clamping time. There we go. And last, but of course not least, nice and easy and slow. You don't want to damage the string. No rush. There's a lot of tension here now. Careful you don't kink the string, so it doesn't get kinked on that side there. There we go. That's our last cross. Pull tension on it. I'm going to pull that twice as well, to make sure we get a real actual tension in there. Okay. There we go. Make sure you clamp that really well. And time to tie it off. So this is a big grommet here, so that's where we're going. Haven't really marked it off. I marked the top one off, but then maybe not a lot. But anyway, you can see how much extra string we've got. It's all that extra, so this we don't need at all to tie it off. So I like to leave enough just in case I need to pull it again. Make sure there's no more crosses left. We've gone through everything. Everything looks good. Do a quick check. So over, and then jump across the next string. So then down, over. Yeah, everything looks good. Cut it off. Just in the way. And then tie it off. We're going to do the same thing as again. Pernell knot. So over, under, and through. I'll provide you guys with a link to a better explanation of that. No point reinventing the wheel here. Okay, and also no point messing things up at this stage. What's going on here? Okay, right. So we have a little loop there, and then just again over, under, and through that loop we've just created there around the string. And pull it. Now we have, this is where we tension it, and then we just pull it through here. So I'm just going to get a starting clamp and just pull, and then pull back there, and back, pull it real tight. Make sure it's nice and tight there. There we go, and then, woohoo, Jesus, that is tight. Really pull it through to secure it with a little bit of a momentum there. Ooh, did I do that? Okay, now I'm going to pull the tension as I let go. And that's it. Come on, yeah. There we go. That's all done. Okay, let go. Cut off the string. And that's it. Release the Racket. Now, that's it. All done.